None of VPM Partners, Bob Kendall, or any of its officers, directors, employees, other personnel, representatives, agents, or independent contractors is, in such capacities, a licensed financial advisor, a registered investment advisor, or a registered broker-dealer. None of VPM Partners or its personnel gives investment or financial advice or makes investment recommendations, nor are any of them in the business of effecting trades or directing client equity accounts or giving futures trading advice tailored to any particular client situation. Nothing contained in VPM Partners broadcasts, on its websites, or in its written materials constitutes a solicitation, recommendation, promotion, endorsement, or offer by others described above of any particular security, other investment product, transaction, or investment. Copyright 2014 VPM Partners. All rights reserved. Terms of use apply. Reproduction, adaptation, distribution, public display, exhibition for profit, or storage in any electronic storage media in whole or in part is prohibited under penalty of law.
Hello everyone, thanks for coming. We're continuing to work on broadcasts. As much experience that we've had with our fun gear, we're still having issues. It's kind of funny. If you could be on this side, be blooper city here, I think. Anyway, today we're Mitch and I are going to be going through the next phase of the Warriors. We're going to be talking about building, utilizing some of the stuff that pre-built, the premieres, and starting to talk about constructing the practice and those things that we talked about last week. So I'm not sure what all we're gonna have here, although that the plan is we're gonna go ahead and go through a PowerPoint, talk about some of these key points. We may flash back and forth to Mitch and I on the New York Stock Exchange, or who knows where we might end up. But we will be back and forth to give you some visuals so you can actually see us talking. So we're going to go ahead to the PowerPoint now. The first screen that we're going to come up on here is going to be great. We can't see the very top line, Mitch, so there's already a glitch. But previously on Process Warriors is what it says at the top, and we'll go to the next screen. So we'll be talking about forging a better practice here. And one of the things that we felt was really important to be able to do here was to actually talk about reviewing the practice and starting from scratch. And the basic concept we want everyone to have is just as if we just met you. So some of you will already have done some of these things. Maybe you thought about doing them, but you didn't do it. But we're going to go ahead and talk about that, reviewing the practice, and then building the products as it will be the next phase. And Mitch, I don't know if you want to. I'm going to go ahead and go to the next screen here.
Okay.
And of course, the whole top of the screen is not visible right now, which really makes it handy. But it so what is your current investment process? And we have this emotional advisor we're calling Emotional Lee, and we're going to talk about different elements that this advisor is constantly going through. And I can see some of these screens and stocks and bonds and stuff, Mitch, are off the screen here. So
okay.
We're having a little resolution issue. And I'll see if I can, while you're talking, I'll see if I can deal with some of this stuff.
Sure. So, just to circle back around, we've met with so many different advisors over the years that come from a very emotional background. They've tried to run their practice unsuccessfully or with moderate success in a very emotional fashion. One of the biggest reasons why advisors come to us, I'd say, is they're looking for that discipline within their practice. And so sort of a take on, was it Primitive Pete, Bob?
Yes.
So, back in the day, I'll say, they had those videos put on by, was it General Motors, for Primitive Pete, telling you how you should be using the tools properly within your work environment. And so what we did is we're taking our own version of that, and we're calling it emotional lead.
Maybe since you've never really been exposed to Pete, I should talk about what Pete really is. So Pete was a caveman who actually developed the first tool known to man, which was a hammer. But then from that point on, he never used the tools for the right reason or the right purpose. So he'd use a screwdriver as a chisel, and he would ruin the screwdriver with his hammer, because his hammer was the main thing that would drive him all the time. And so part of what we see out of advisors along those lines is that you folks tend to have some attitudes about things, and then you try to apply the wrong tool to the strategy, which ends up ruining the strategy or the tool or whatever, however you want to look at it. That's kind of the analogy that we've been working on, and I'm working on the resolution here so we can get this whole screen up for you. But you can see the bulk of this, and I'm going to try to change the res a little bit while Mitch is talking. So
Sure.
Hopefully he'll be able to. I can edit this thing while he's talking and be able to see what's going on.
Yep, we're operating without a net, so to speak. So, but to give you a profile of Lee, Lee, typically when we meet an advisor like Lee, they come from an allocation strategy background where they have a number of portfolios within their practice. In this case, we gave the example of pretty much one general model, but has all these different risk tolerances where they have a 90-10 split, an 80-20 split, a 70-30 split, so on down the road, because they have just pretty much one basic set of ideas that they're trying to fit all these different risk tolerances. And maybe this advisor is also interested in using ETFs. He's heard about ETFs, hasn't really used them because he's been using mutual funds for all this time. And some advisors that are in this situation, maybe they have a stock portfolio, or maybe they have a bond portfolio, but it's still relatively new territory. It's new waters for them. And I put a little note here at the bottom. You can just see that sort of as an asterisk, it's sort of an aside. This is their general framework, but they also have a few clients with custom allocations. Now, when we get to talking with these type of advisors, it's very helpful because it gives us that frame of reference to work on. We sort of know where they've been and where they're at right now. But when we really start digging into that sausage making factory, we find out that things aren't as clean as they let on. And partly it's because they didn't even know it was in that type of environment. And so when we start nailing down, what the different risk tolerances are, we find out that maybe they do have what they think is an aggressive model, but when we ask them, well, what is that? Give us the holdings of it. They really don't have a good framework of what that aggressive model is, because for some clients, it's slightly different allocations and a variety of different funds. And if you look at other clients, maybe they have similar allocations. Maybe some of the funds are the same. Maybe some are different. There really is a tremendous amount of inconsistency within the practice. And so it makes it very difficult for them to be able to manage this. We've given the example before of an advisor with a fairly substantially large book of business who came to us. And when we were first starting the interview process, once they had started the trial with VPM, we were trying to get them up and running on the system. And the assistant that I was working with, he kept having to push me off a little bit because they were in the middle of a reallocation of their client accounts. And it literally took them over a week or two to be able to deal with this type of framework that they thought they had in place. And at the end of their reallocation or their adjustment to this framework, they still weren't convinced that they had necessarily dealt with all the clients within their practice. So not only had they taken a tremendous amount of time to make the trades, there also wasn't any sort of solid assurance that they had done everything right the first time for these clients. And it was still just a mess trying to nail down, well, what are the strategies that you're using?
Well, let's talk about something here, just going through the process and not getting too hung up on this case just yet.
Sure.
But there's a couple things that we find when we start looking at a strategy is, typical is allocation strategy. That's what most of you have been explored to. And by the way, they can see you live now, but they can't see me.
I see that.
So you get all the different models blended and all of those things. But what we find is, and this, our goal is, we'll see, have a screen on this later, SOS is suitability and scalability. And what we see with a lot of practices is that the scalability is just not there. Sometimes there literally are hundreds and hundreds of different positions throughout the practice, and you can't run a very large practice when you're scattered all over the place. And this is what Mitch was talking about, who's got what and all those things. So in working with scalability, these are things that we feel like you really need to kind of focus on. And I'm going to do my best to go to this next screen. So as you're going through that, is in the end you end up with, what does your practice look like? So from suitability, from whether it's you've got taxable accounts or non-taxable, qualified, non-qualified type assets. All those things need to be understood. And once you get there, then you start to define everything from who your clients are, what you need to do with your practice, all of those type of things. And that is basically what's always driving the whole, I guess, process of determining what things you're going to be able to do. So I'm actually going. Well, I thought I was going to bring me up, but now I've got something really crazy going here the other side. So we'll leave Mitch like he is at the moment. But the whole goal of this is to define who and what your clients are. So now, as we go to the next screen here, we want to start to. And this is what I was just talking about, the qualified or non-qualified, age groups, all the suitability. And this is something I'm going to let Mitch talk about, because I think he will cover this subject a lot better and more thorough since he's lived on this side. But where are the assets? And a lot of times we come in, not only are there hundreds and hundreds of different types of positions out there, but they are scattered around at different mutual funds. They're all over the place. And so trying to get to that SOS, the scalability part of that is nearly impossible because you have so many different places where you need to put orders in. So Mitch, why don't you address that?
Yeah, so once we establish what the basic profile of a practice is, when we asked an advisor to start the process of building out these portfolios, one of the things, if they really don't feel like they have a good grip of what they need, we start going through this sort of questionnaire type process where we ask them, well, how much is in qualified versus non-qualified? What's the general brackets or groupings of ages for your clients? And they can be framed as simply as the young working households, to the near retirement or in retirement, to the living off retirement phase. So those three main groups for the ages of clients, because they all have similarities within them. Also, where are the assets at? That's a pretty basic question, you would think, and for some it's very easy to answer because maybe you only have one custodian. As Bob has mentioned, I come from a background of actually having to run this on the same side of the table just like you guys did. And when I really started nailing things down, I had to really find out the answers to these. If you go through the ADV form, ADV Part 2 Form B or whatever it's called, Form D, where you have to actually answer, these are some of the questions that you should be having to answer already. So you should have a grip on what the answers to this is. And, for some, it's as simple as looking at your current book of business and going to a tool like Asset Book or going to an Allbridge type setup, and they have these downloads, these reports that you could download that will list out where are all the client accounts at each of these different custodians and what they're holding. That's a tremendously valuable report to get from your custodian, and I would encourage you, if you don't know how to get that right now, contact your technology department, either at the broker dealer or at the custodian, to find out how to get these reports, and get your Excel savvy guy on the office to be able to help you figure out this. You can do what are known as pivot tables, where you can grab this data and begin to break it down So you can see, where are all the assets being held as far as the custodian, what securities are being utilized. And I think I touched upon this last week when we had our first Process Warriors meeting. But I've done this a number of times, both in execution as far as being an advisor doing this and day-to-day activity, as well as coaching advisors on how to do this. But what it does is it gives you the raw detail as far as where these clients' assets are located. And then from there, you can begin to work through them. And if you see anything that jumps out at you, you can then begin to